Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Den of Sin with Devin and James. How you doing, Devin? It's been a while.
It has been a while. And we've texted back and forth several times, but this is our first time, as face-to-face as one can get from California to Texas. But it's been a little while, and I think we've both added some gray hairs to our heads. It's been a crazy month. Sorry to our listeners that you've had to wait so long for this, but we want to assure you we haven't gone away. We're still here.
Yeah, with between just life, things, scheduling things, just your personal life things, and then here in Texas, a lot of things have come up because of insane storms, which are a Texas, especially a South Texas sort of staple. But like being without power for a few days, there's all kinds of manner of life occurrences that have gotten in the way. But hopefully, we can get back onto a more a more consistent schedule. But yeah, I'm still excited. This is concluding our, will this be 3 episodes or 4 episodes of films of 1989?
This is our first and I'm hoping last 3-parter.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know. I'm game to do it again, but this was a hard one. Yeah, 1989 drama and comedy. I think I was 1989 fatigued going into this. Those last 2 episodes that were so great with so many amazing movies. There was a part of me that just kind of felt like this would be the easy one. But I was wrong. There's so much going on here. Warning to anybody who's listening, I guarantee you some of your favorite dramas and comedies will be left out of this because we just don't have, I'm not doing a part 4. I'm ready to move on to our next thing.
It's something that we can always revisit too on a future episode.
Yes, of course. And we have missed stuff already. Like we talked for 2.5 hours about 89 action movies and failed to even mention that there was a new James Bond with License to Kill.
That's right.
I think we'll cover a lot of the bases here.
I don't want to get into it too much, but just curious, are you a Timothy Dalton James Bond fan?
I am a James Bond fan. So to me, yes, it matters who's playing him in terms of what I'm just going to pop in on any random day, which, again, to be honest, on any random day, I'm probably not popping in a James Bond movie at all. But if I am, I have the box set, which is an awesome box set. I'm going to run towards the early years, and Dalton is where I kind of stop. Even the Daniel Craig stuff, I appreciate it. I love what it is. It's just not high up on my priority list.
You're a bigger Bond fan than I am. I'm very sporadic with my Bond love. I don't love them all. I love certain films. I do also tend to lean heavily into the first films, but weirdly, because I think because View to Kill was the first one I saw as a kid, I think that was still my favorite for a long time. Despite some people hating it.
It's one of the least liked ones.
Yeah, but I don't know. It was my favorite for a long time. I think because it was the first one I saw. It had a cool soundtrack and stuff. But anyways, we're not here to talk about James Bond.
No,
we're here to talk about the dramas and the comedies. Which,
all right.
I was going to say, maybe License to Kill falls in. There's a little bit of comedy. Is there a little bit of drama? I don't know. It's been a while since I've seen License to Kill. But anyways, that was a weird tangent. But yeah.
A character in License to Kill named Felix Leiter is gifted a cigarette lighter for his wedding. I guess that's funny. That's
sure. Real quick, one thing I want to address here, because going through the list of films, in 1989 I was 12 years old, and a lot of the films that I was really excited about in this era were films that I saw as a kid. I saw as new films, especially a lot of the genre stuff. So I had a built-in love of these films that might heavily have leaned on nostalgia. But with the dramas, all of these dramas, because I was 12 years old at the time, obviously a lot of these films weren't either, my parents weren't going to let us see, or just wasn't a film I was gravitated to. And some of the films I have revisited post 1989, I saw them probably in my 20s or early 30s. But it's just weird. It's in this weird phase where, as an adult, I went back to the films of the 70s and the early 80s. A lot of the dramas, obviously, comedies is 80s and 90s. Even as a kid, I saw most, a lot of the big comedies. But a lot of the adult comedies and stuff wasn't something I had seen at the time. So it's just because of the timing of it. It's this sort of 89, like 88, 89, 90 for the dramas. Even though there's some phenomenal dramas, we're going to get into them. It just doesn't hold. I don't know. It's this weird thing where I don't gravitate towards them. They don't seem exciting or interesting to me. And I think a lot of that has to do with the age I was at the time, and then my own personal feelings of that, because I have so many memories of 1989, specifically of watching films of that time. But a lot of the better films weren't really on my purview because I was a 12-year-old kid. So, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting thing that you touched on, because all of our film discussions and all of anybody's film discussions are going to lean on nostalgia and history to some extent. And I think the period where we grew up, or I should say where we grew into adulthood, would have been in the 90s and the early 2000s. And so we were around for 1989. When we thought 1989, we thought Batman, Indiana Jones, the big names, but the dramas were a little too far away from being considered history yet.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think you and I are in a unique position to have let a lot drop through the cracks here, just based on the years we focused on, and these being a blind spot because we were there when it happened, and we didn't investigate something if we were there when it happened.
Well said.
But to get us started, to me, there's an elephant in the room when it comes to the dramas of 1989. And I'm just going to put it out there right here at the start, because we're so close to when the Academy Awards happened this year. And it was a very controversial Academy Awards. I don't know if you saw it, James. They made several mistakes, I think, but one of them was a nearly unforgivable mistake.
You're talking about 89, not this year?
You know what? It applies to both.
Actually, I actually enjoyed the Oscars this year. I shouldn't say that. I thought I was a huge fan of Nomadland. And anyways, well, that's a separate discussion. Anyways, I'm assuming you're talking about what won Best Picture versus what should have won Best Picture.
What won Best Picture versus what wasn't even nominated for Best Picture. Yeah, we're talking about Driving Miss Daisy winning the best film for 1989. And I'll be honest, the only reason to hate Driving Miss Daisy is because it won Best Picture. It's a fine movie. Good performances by Jessica Tandy, Morgan Freeman in a part that he created on stage. So, its pedigree is good. Dan Aykroyd was nominated for his work even in that. And at the same time, I have nothing really to say about it. It was such a white perspective on
that's right.
The Black experience, which there was a lot of then and now. And
Hollywood tends to do it. We're getting better about that, but yes, exactly.
I don't think we're getting better about that, because what was it, Green Book just won a couple years ago, which was essentially Driving Miss Daisy in reverse.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. And then, but I don't know. But then there's a level of, I don't know. I mean, this is definitely not for me to say, but I mean, some of it goes into what is the Black experience watching that movie? What is the Black community? What are their feelings about these movies, or do they? So I don't know. I can't. I mean, I can see it from white eyes and point out things, and I could be missing giant, because again, as woke as you could possibly try to be, as open-minded and as considerate as you can try to be, we still have skewed perspectives, because we just no amount of empathy we can't have that true shared experience. So I mean, I don't know. I know some of these movies seem extra saccharine, and I'll even go so far as to say problematic, but yeah, I don't know. It's a huge topic, specifically as far as modern films, things like The Help and stuff. Because there's a level of, at least from what I've seen in my limited perspective, I've seen the Black community sort of embrace movies like The Help, which on paper seemed like it would have been pretty, I don't know. This is a weird topic we could definitely get into a future episode, but
sure.
But yeah, I think, you're definitely right, though. There's still plenty of room to go.
It's the type of thing I wish that I could say, oh, this happened in 1989. Doesn't that show how much we've grown? It's actually a marker to show how little we've grown. And that's why it's still a bitter win. And again, there's not anything particularly, for lack of a better term, offensive in Driving Miss Daisy. What's offensive is the win, and what's offensive is the snub. And of course, what we're talking about when we refer to the snub is Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing. And I will admit, things still feel very fresh in my mind when it comes to Do the Right Thing, because since the last time we recorded, the Derek Chauvin trial took place, and a creep went to jail, and then I think it was a good thing. And
absolutely,
when I was watching the verdict come in, pretty much as soon as it was done, I realized, ooh, Do the Right Thing, 1989. I'm watching Do the Right Thing tonight. And by the end, I was fucking sobbing. Okay. It still packs a punch. It's still incredibly relevant, even to the George Floyd story. It is 100% relevant. And the I think the reason maybe why people didn't quote unquote get it in 1989, or why certain people didn't get it, is because it doesn't answer the questions for you. It just presents the problem. That's why it closes with a quote from Martin Luther King, followed by a quote from Malcolm X that seem contradictory, but on deeper inspection, you realize that like they're actually complementary. They are kind of a step A and a step B.
That's right.
By Mookie being the one, I'm just spoiler alert, by Mookie being the one who throws the garbage can through the pizza parlor door or window, he's the most liked character in the film, and he does the most kind of ethically questionable thing right there. And it's meant to kind of distract you from I'm not sure quite how to say this. Yeah. You just saw a black man murdered by the police in front of people, strangled, just to like put the timely spin on this again. And the reaction was that he threw this garbage can through the window of the pizza parlor where this all started. And what people remember and what people debate and what people cry foul about is like, why did Mookie do that? Why Mookie didn't have to do that? You just saw a black man murdered and you're mad that Mookie threw a fucking garbage can through a window. That is the point. That sort of distraction that happens inside your mind that you can't even help. That's what this movie is about, and it's making you think past your first thought. And that's why it's a masterpiece, and that's why it stands up. It's a timepiece and it's timeless at the exact same time.
That's the thing, is it's such aesthetically, musically, it's such a frozen piece of time from a specific environment, from a specific culture, from a specific pop culture, but 33 years on, and it's like still very prescient, very it's unfortunate. And I think even outside of its social issues, I also think it's a more challenging film, and I think it's more deserving just as a film outside of the message. I think it's a more complex film. I think the performances, the directing style, and again, the thing is, like, I saw Drive Miss Daisy in school. I have nothing against the movie. Again, it's great actors, but it's so like Oscar bait. It's so like trying to be that movie that, happens almost every year. It's just so obvious. It's to me, like, the history of the Best Picture Award. It was, this, obviously. It was the best production. It was the biggest movie. Originally, it had nothing to do with the most genius. It was like the biggest production, the most, had the best, most extras, the most costly film, the biggest spectacle that people wanted to go see. That was the original intent of that award. But obviously now I think we need to do a whole episode of films that shouldn't have won, the Academy Awards, and films that should have won Academy Awards. Because, if you're a film fan, there's obviously a lot to unpack there. There's a lot to discuss. I will say, though, I think Spike Lee as a director, I think we're getting off topic a little bit, but I think Spike Lee has made some great films. I think he's made some movies that had a lot of potential, but just maybe didn't pull off. And I thought he's had some mediocre films. But thinking about how much Spike Lee accomplished at the time, for like who he was, what his public opinions were, he had some pretty controversial public opinions. Like, he's been the target of some media hate and some critical hate. But man, like, Do the Right Thing is such an accomplishment and such a great movie that you can watch over and over again with, like, top to bottom, amazing performances. And it's like, I hate to say that's his best movie, but honestly, when I think about it, it's his best movie. I think it's his most complete. And he's made some other great movies. It's not a discredit. I have some interesting things I would love to. We could do a whole Spike Lee. I actually have two different experiences in the theater with watching Spike Lee movies, and two diametrically opposed audience reactions to things that happened in Spike Lee movies that sort of affected me as a human being. But that's a whole other conversation for another time, because we have a lot to get into in 1989 with dramas and comedies. So I'll save that for another future episode. But yeah, great place to start, because again, when you're talking dramas, it's weird how they have some things in common, but they have a lot that, they're diametrically opposed. But yeah, great opening, a great first thing to start with then.
One of the things that's interesting about this particular topic is I didn't expect going in, maybe I should have, because I'm fairly aware of the release dates of things. The tone of these movies swing really wide, because some of the best dramas are really important or even dark material. And some of the best comedies of 89 are the dumbest fucking things I've ever seen that I still consider brilliant. So in the nature of this, we've done two of the more dramatic ones. Do you have any comedies you'd like to get us started with?
Sure, because probably one of my favorite comedies of I don't even put it. The movie The Burbs holds a place in my heart that isn't eternally undying. It's a movie I think about oddly, like it pops up in my head all the time. As a kid, there are lines from that movie that me and my brothers, both brothers, quoted to each other constantly. But to me, The Burbs is the most perfect. It hits me on every level. As like a big horror fan, there's definitely like this weird sort of like horror mystery element to it. To the day I die, one of my favorite things on earth is watching Tom Hanks lose it. Even in shitty movies like Money Pit, when he loses it, it's the funniest thing in the world. The fact that Tom Hanks gave up comedies, like real, like legitimate comedies, still breaks my heart. But yeah, I mean, I think it's the most likable that Corey Feldman was ever actually. I loved Corey Feldman growing up. But I think it's still the movie where he's still the most likable of all. He's not playing. He's playing just sort of your typical dumbass, slacker, teenager neighbor.
I don't know.
He's really likable in it.
I agree he's likable. I don't think he's typical though. Like he still looks and acts like a teenager who hangs out way too much with Michael Jackson.
Well, see, to me, I read it. I think maybe at the time I read it more as like just a skater, so that weird juxtaposition between like a 80s skater kid, but also kind of a Hesher, kind of headbanging like stoner kid. Not that those things are even. I mean, those things are pretty connected, actually. Now that I say it out loud, but I don't know either way. But yeah, I mean, he never lost that. Bruce Dern. I mean, the whole.
Bruce Dern's amazing, and they use the music from Patton coming on every time he gives.
But I mean, I could talk about that movie all day long. It is literally one of my favorite films ever, of any genre, of any year. It holds a very special place in my heart.
It is. It's
probably my favorite. Is it my favorite movie of 1989? It might actually be my most favorite movie, and that's saying a lot, as we've discussed in this podcast. Some of my favorite movies released in this year, but I think it's one of the most watchable. God, and Carrie Fisher was so cute in it, and so like, I don't know. It's just such a great movie, man. I can't stop. It's I have nothing bad to say about it. It's perfect.
It is pretty perfect, and it's a really tightly done film. The entire thing takes place on that cul-de-sac, which of course is on the Universal backlot. It's the Leave It to Beaver house and the Munster house. I think Corey Feldman's character lives in the Munster house.
Does he?
I think they're all right there. I mean, Desperate Housewives is there too, but I don't care. I care about Leave It to Beaver and the Munsters.
The thing is, if you watch it, like it's incredible that it's actually able to balance such a, I mean, comedy and like tension and laughter. There's a very like tight relationship there. There's a very recognized relationship between laughing and being and that combination. But its tone is so brilliant in the fact that it is hysterically funny, but when it builds up that tension and that creepiness, there's a sort of Hitchcockian level of like tension that it builds, and it's and again, the ending is brilliant and great and perfect. And anyways, that's if you said what is the number one comedy of 1989 for me personally, and there's some other great ones we'll talk about, but that is my number one.
Well, what's interesting about it too. Actually, first I'm going to give a shout out to. I always love anything with Henry Gibson. He was great in this, and I want to point out that I still get the creeps when I see that redheaded kid.
Yeah, well, he's just creepy looking. That poor kid.
I've seen pictures of him, now, and he's fine. So I don't know what's going on right there.
I think the neck beard's a big part of that. But.
Yeah, neck beard is usually a big part of it when that's part of the look. But an interesting thing I discovered about The Burbs that I find interesting, and I don't say this as a fly in the face of what you've just said. I say it to prove a lesson here. The Burbs was the lowest rated movie of 1989. Like, critics hated The Burbs. It did well at the box office, so the public disagreed. But
I can think of a few movies from 89 that definitely deserve it.
Agreed. It shows you how to put things in perspective. Yes. The worst reviewed movie of 1989. I'm actually a little surprised that the worst reviewed movie of 1989 wasn't my kind of emotional, nostalgic favorite comedy of 1989, because it certainly took its fair share of beatings too. And that's UHF with Weird Al Yankovic.
I do love UHF. It's still,
it fills me with joy. I watch it at least once a year, and it fills me with joy to watch that movie.
It's great. I haven't seen it. I just was just say this movie came up for the conversation with some people at work because it was the only two people had seen it, me and a guy that's older than me, and everybody else hadn't even heard of it. But it's like God, it's been a while since I've seen it, and it's still though. I mean, Michael Richards, a young Michael Richards, and weird. I mean, just what a crazy movie.
It's an insane,
as you would
cast,
imagine, made starring Weird Al, which unfortunately didn't really kick off a film career for him, which I'm pretty sad about.
Well, it was. I actually have some links into UHF in terms of other things that I've pursued. So I'm not saying I am friends with, but I have had conversations with both Weird Al Yankovic and the director of this movie, Jay Levy, who also was then and is still now Weird Al's business manager, and also used to be Dr. Demento's business manager, which is really, those three people tie into how Weird Al became a thing in the first place. And of course, Dr. Demento has a little cameo in UHF too. He's in the crowd at Stanley Spadowski's clubhouse, and he gets whipped cream sprayed in his mouth by Stanley Spadowski at one point. But we talked about UHF a little bit in the context of the conversation I was having with these two guys, and they were talking about how Orion tested this with test audiences, and it was like their highest thing their highest tested movie ever. They were excited that it tested better than RoboCop, which I think was the previous placeholder for that distinction. And so they're like, okay, this is going to be our huge hit. We're going to put this out in the middle of summer so that we can get as much money out of this movie as possible, because everyone's going to love this. And of course, we all know this was the summer of Batman, Indiana Jones, Ghostbusters 2, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I mean, this movie got beat up like a runt in a fucking Mr. Universe pageant, It's a great movie, but really it should have been like a February or a November movie, and it probably would have done really well, and Weird Al probably would have done something else. I don't know if it would have been a sequel to this. Of course, Weird Al has been in stuff. It certainly didn't kill his career. None of the conversations that I had with these guys was lamenting anything. It was just kind of talking about what worked and what didn't. Also, Jay Levy appears in the film himself. He plays Gandhi in Gandhi 2.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
But the mix of pop culture references and parodies and things, it really did kind of perfectly capture Weird Al's career at that point in film version. The parodies were not necessarily in a Zucker Brothers Abrams way. They weren't completely separated from that, but there was an actual storyline going through this with all of these offshoots. So you had parodies of Raiders of the Lost Ark and Rambo, exactly. Which, by the way, Stallone was supposed to be in that part.
Really?
Stallone was going to be the guy who rented Weird Al's version of Rambo helicopter. So he got busy, which Stallone's in 2 movies in 89, so I don't doubt that he got busy. I'm sure Stallone would have worked with Weird Al just for the kick of working with Weird Al, but that would have been such a good get, especially at the time. But yeah, that movie's just kind of magical to me. Kevin McCarthy is the villain also, I need to point out, from most famous from Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but apparently he had a real hard time keeping his shit together on set because he was required to be so nasty that he would start cracking up at how nasty his character was, calling people names like festering bowl of dog snot. Or the scene where he tells his one of his underlings at work, his guy's standing there, mustache and a big dumb cowboy hat with all sorts of feathers and things on it. He says, "Take that ridiculous thing off your head." And the guy looks sad for a second, then he just rips off the mustache and walks out still wearing the hat. And it's
that's exactly like
little things.
Yeah, that's exactly the sense of humor of that movie. Yeah. That's why, I mean, I don't think I'm glad it wasn't necessarily, I think UHF is one of those films that like has diehard following and is sort of that like litmus test for people. Like, I know I'm going to like you if you're also a fan of UHF kind of thing. It just,
yes, well put.
It's so idiosyncratic and so you have to get it to get it. You know what I mean? Like, and it's, I mean, you know, I think that goes into the career of Weird Al too. If you're a fan of Weird Al, and I mean, you know, growing up, there's a lot of, I knew a lot of people that were, you know, Monty Python fans, and there's just a very specific type of person that movie really appealed to, and I'm glad it exists. I will say though, you know, I love Weird Al. He seems like the greatest. Seems like honestly like legitimately a great guy. But I hit seeing him with the long hair and the no mustache still weirds me out to this day. I just still prefer my Weird Al, like 80s Weird Al, which is unfair. A man should be able to have whatever look he wants, but it's still,
yeah. I mean,
every time I see it,
he spent a lot of money to get his vision corrected, and then people got pissed off he wasn't wearing glasses anymore. So. Which
Poor
I think,
guy.
well, I think it's a little bit of a nerd thing. It's a little bit like, hey, that was one of your nerdy things, and now you feel less like one of us. He's actually a really handsome dude, and really smart. He's great to be around. Like, again, I'm not trying to say I'm friends with Weird Al, but circumstances even had me on a Zoom call with him just this last month, among him and several other people. And I mean, he's just Al to me, like the long hair or whatever, like he's still Al. It doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, first off, he's yeah, exactly. No, I was going to say, you know, there was one thing about 89 is like, I saw a fair amount of movies in the theater, but they were like some weird choices. One of which was See No Evil, Hear No Evil. Cause my dad was a giant fan of, anybody who has a goddamn brain should be a fan of Richard Pryor and Gene
Wilder.
Gene Wilder, a goddamn brain fart from again, I shouldn't be on podcast. My brain is Swiss cheese. I don't know how I barely remember my own name. Anyways, but my dad was a huge Richard Pryor fan, and he loved the combination of them. You know, Gene Wilder is a genius. Richard Pryor is obviously a genius. I mean, they're both genius. I don't know if See No Evil, Hear No Evil was one of their better works, but I enjoyed it in the theater. But my dad thought it was the funniest thing he'd ever. My dad had a few. Walk Like a Man with Howie Mandel was one of the things he laughed the most hard at. My dad had an interesting taste in cinema. But so it's
not an awful movie. I'd like to revisit that one.
I saw Uncle Buck in the theater, and I mean, you know,
yes.
There's a few. I mean, obviously, like there's a lot of celebrities who die way too young, and you sort of lament what could have been and the work that, you know, you wish they would have made. There's a lot. I mean, Hollywood's full of that. You know, John Candy for me is that guy though. Like probably more than almost anybody. And again, he had multiple films in this year. You know, seeing him as he got a little bit older, trying to take a little bit more chances. Although, goddamn Canadian bacon, it's been a while since I saw that. But just like, I don't know. Anyways, I loved John Candy. I love Uncle Buck. I've heard some millennials start talking shit about it's a bad movie, and I get very upset about it. But I can't explain why. But I love it. I mean, there's a lot of there's some politically incorrect movie or aspects to it, but I love it. But another movie I saw in the theater, of all movies to see in the theater with my father and my brothers, was The Dream Team.
I'm so glad you brought up The Dream Team. You've actually mentioned 3 of my favorites here, but
well, we'll get into it. Let's get into it. So let's get it. If you want to talk about, I'm ready to talk about any of those movies if you want to get into it.
Well, if I was just to do my 2 cents version, See No Evil, Hear No Evil is an extremely flawed movie with some very funny bits and pieces.
Yeah, exactly.
The Fuzzy Wuzzy was a woman thing still cracks me up for some reason. It's incredibly dumb. Sad to know that was not a pairing that came from friendship.
Yeah.
This was not a Abbott and Costello sort of situation. Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor were not friends off stage. They didn't hang out after the director said cut. Gene Wilder, from all accounts, seemed to really like and respect Richard Pryor, but also would get frustrated with him due to a lot of the drug issues and things that Richard Pryor was notorious for, and never really fully recovered due to also getting, was it MS that he got?
Yeah.
And that was starting to show in this movie. So there's these 2 in decline, but some good moments. Uncle Buck, summer classic. Saw it on summer vacation with my parents and my brother and sister. We still talk about it to this day. We've shown it to our kids. It's one of those movies. Some movies, it's almost like, I don't consider Uncle Buck to be so problematic it hurts, but sometimes.
Oh no.
Uncle
But
Buck,
it's got moments.
Uncle Buck is kind of like having a racist uncle, because it's a movie that I'm going to love despite its problems. And I'm going to call out those problems as I see them. But I think it's true of pretty much anything from the 80s or at this point, anything from 2010. But Uncle Buck is just fantastic. John Candy gives the performance of a lifetime. Even movies like Who is Harry Crumb coming out in the same year couldn't overshadow what he did with Uncle Buck. You felt like you were watching John Candy as an uncle. There was no
sort of definitely.
There was definitely acting there, but you did not feel any acting there.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I mean, the thing is, like, he's a big. I mean, he had a tendency to play similar characters, the sort of big, dumb, loud, abrasive kind of characters. Well, but I think at the heart of him, he had such a great heart, and I don't know. I mean, I love even he always had a great sense. I mean, whether he was in Home Alone, he always had such a beautiful heart. He always played a character with like a beautiful heart, like who meant well, even if he didn't always pull it off. And I think Buck is the perfect, like, he's a big, loud, sort of kind of, doesn't necessarily have all of his shit together, but he means well, and it's such a perfect. He's so good at that, and like the cast was great. The all the kids in it were really great. There's some famous, anyways, but yeah. So Uncle Buck is. I just love John Candy, anyways, but Uncle Buck is such a great. It's like,
yeah. And back to the Dream Team, which I'm so glad you brought up, because I think that this movie's in danger of being forgotten. I think a lot of people either miss the Dream Team or haven't thought about it since they saw it on Cinemax. And well, you brought it up. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the Dream Team?
So, I mean, it's basically Michael Keaton, who's great in it, of course. This is really when he was like, he occupied the kind of same space as like maybe Steve Guttenberg at this point, where he's just sort of the wise assy kind of, like a man-childy, but he takes, I don't know if I'm remembering every part of the story, because again, it's been a while since I've seen it, but he takes Christopher Lloyd. I'm trying to think of everybody who's in it. It's Christopher Lloyd,
Peter
Boyle, and who's the third lunatic?
Stephen First.
Is it Stephen First?
Yeah.
But yeah, they all play like deranged. They're all like mental patients, and he takes them out for like a day out, like a field trip, something like that. Yeah, no, they're in group therapy together, and their doctor takes them out to a Yankee game. Gets them a field trip day pass to go to a Yankee game. Yeah. Now I'm starting to remember. Okay. Michael Keaton is also a lunatic, but he's like the smooth talking, like, right? He has anger management issues. And that's right. Exactly. Okay. Yeah. Now I'm remembering. It's been a while since I've seen it. Yeah. You should revisit it. It stands up to time. I even liked it at the time. Like, I thought it was a fun movie. Peter Boyle has a God complex. Very literally. Yeah. Christopher Lloyd is playing a character who nowadays would definitely be ringing true as like someone on the spectrum. But they play it more as like a denial. He denies who he is. He has a family that he refuses to see. Half the time he acts like he's a doctor in the institute. That's right. And then Stephen First is the most, I guess, the closest to being catatonic. He doesn't speak. He only speaks. He only speaks what he hears on television, which is mostly baseball games. So they ask him questions, and he'll respond with like swing and a miss, or it's going to be a big inning, which I think is his way of saying he needs to go to the bathroom. That's right. they're trying to decipher him throughout the whole thing. And there are a couple of moments in there where the performances, because these actors are really kind of at the top of their game right here. This is the same year Keaton plays Batman. Christopher Lloyd, this is the same year where he's playing Doc Brown in Back to the Future 2. These are all incredible actors, and they're playing the comedy, but every one of them has a moment at some point where their vulnerability really comes through.
and you see them for who they were before they got into the Institute. And I wouldn't say that any part of the movie gets weepy or anything. It never crosses over into being a sad movie. But these performances on their own, elements of them can make you tear up.
I remember it being I honestly remember being kind of sad, honestly, like, because your heart kind of breaks for them. I will say, I think one thing too is my family has a history of mental health problems, and I've had relatives, nobody in my immediate family, but I have relatives who've been institutionalized, and it's a weird trigger for my anxiety. It's just that, specifically mental institutions. So, I used to be a huge fan of, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It's harder for me to watch now without it kind of triggering a sort of sense of anxiety for me. It's a weird personal thing, but it is weird that it's like again, they take mental health problems and turn it into like a zany comedy kind of, or like,
I won't say it's the most sensitive thing in the world, but I think it comes from a sensitive place.
It comes from a good place. It's a well-intentioned place. Yeah. Well, yeah. So who plays the female doctor, or the head of the?
There's no female doctor there. I think what you might be thinking of is Lorraine Braccio is Michael Keaton's girlfriend, who he goes to. Right. He finds her when they're in New York City. Their doctor witnesses a police murder, and
that's right. Yeah. Okay.
While he's taking the one who doesn't talk for a pee break behind a dumpster, he witnesses a murder. He himself gets hit in the head, so he's in the hospital as a John Doe, and his 4 patients are stuck in New York City. And the only one who has seen what happened is the one who doesn't speak outside of baseball references. They even call it out at one point. It's like talking to Lassie. Did Timmy fall down the well? They're trying to get information out of him. They just kind of have to keep an eye. Oh, look, he's reacting to that ambulance. Was the doctor taken away in an ambulance? I'm sure it's on Pluto. I'm gonna rewatch this, like, just because. It's a movie that such a weird little movie, and like, again, great. I mean, the cast is phenomenal, and I remember liking it, but I'm gonna rewatch it just because it's sort of, now you're kind of reminding me of obviously the plot or whatever, and now I kind of feel like I need to finish or watch it to But well, I'll tell you what, I somehow by chance of fate ended up with 2 copies of it on Blu-ray, so I'll send you a Blu-ray of it.
Damn, all right. That's crazy.
I think it was a double birthday gift. Like I literally think it was a matter of my mom hit buy twice on Amazon. And so I got 2 of the same thing that was really one thing from my mom for my birthday one year. Because that is oddly enough, that's a movie I can watch with my mom at any time. She doesn't usually watch things with guns and bad cops in it. So before we get too much further,
in comedies,
I think that I don't think we're too close to running out of time, but people are going to yell at us if we don't talk about Ghostbusters 2, and there's a couple others beyond that we definitely got to cover. Of course, I was 10 in '89, and I was as excited for this as I was for Indiana Jones and Batman, possibly even more on a certain level.
Same, the exact same.
What was your feeling as a 12-year-old walking out of the theater after Ghostbusters 2? Were you satisfied?
I love the movie. I still don't see it as a failure that so many people did or do, I guess, even to this day. In fact, I think it's probably more. To me, it hit all those. I mean, it gave me exactly what I wanted. And I actually think it's actually scarier than the first one. In fact, for one of my YouTube accounts, I actually used a screenshot of when Egon and is it only the 2 of them? I think it's Egon and Ray are in the subway, and then like all of a sudden, like all these like dead bodies appear, and there's like skulls on spikes and shit or whatever. Like that's some terrifying, like, first it was a scary moment in the movie, but like all of the designs of these like corpses in this sort of subway or whatever, this abandoned subway tunnel or whatever, they're super scary. Like the designs are pretty terrifying, and I don't know, man, I thought it, like, I love the, I mean, it's dumb as fuck. And I knew it was dumb then because it doesn't make any sense that the Statue of Liberty can move just because you put like it's like, it doesn't, it would break. It's like, but I still love it. I mean, it's a great song in that moment. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I mean, the whole like mood slime thing, to me works. Like, I don't have, like, people hate that plot point for some reason, but I don't know. I enjoy it. I really like it. I like, our friend Casey, he's a fan. I know he's a fan. I think we had some camaraderie there when we both realized that we enjoy Ghostbusters too. But yeah, it gets a lot of hate. I like it. Do I like it as much as the first one? No, probably not as much, but it's close. But I enjoy it. I still watch it all the time. I don't see it as faulted as so many people do. I don't know. I don't know what people are expecting. I mean, does it have flaws? Of course, but I still enjoy the movie. I still think it's a fun movie that captures the spirit of the first.
I agree. I loved it coming out of the movie, but I will say it's one of the first sequels I saw in a theater where I had a distinct feeling of this was not as good as the first one. Seeing the Indiana Jones movies, I have all sorts of opinions on all of them now. But as a kid, each one is better than the last because that's just kind of how your mind works. And this was one of the first ones where I walked out saying this was great, but it wasn't that. And
I mean, the first one is so perfect. It's one of the most perfect movies ever.
It is.
And the comedy hits so perfectly. Every joke lands. Every performance is great. The Stay Puft Marshmallow Man is, I mean, every nook and cranny of the first Ghostbusters movie is amazing. So yeah, it's not gonna, I think it'd be almost impossible to match it as far as quality.
I completely agree. I'm not talking down on Ghostbusters 2 particularly. I think there was a problem that once again came in with the studio. The studio has consistently always been the villain in Ghostbusters movies. Ivan Reitman was clearly trying to make something that was in the spirit of the first movie, and for the most part, it succeeds. But in between the first one and the second one, the cartoon had come out, and the cartoon was a different tone. I mean, the characters didn't even look like the characters necessarily. So the cartoon really should have been kept as a separate thing, but the studio was forcing Reitman to make certain things more like the cartoon, which is why you get kind of a Slimer with more of a personality. Like Rick Moranis was tasked with going after Slimer in a completely cut side story of the movie, which I would love to see that. But Slimer only came back because of the cartoon. They stopped smoking because of the cartoon. I'm not saying, God damn it, Ghostbusters should smoke. But these were active decisions that were pressed on Ivan Reitman at the time. The original draft was much darker. William Atherton's character would have returned for their original idea. Bill Murray has very famously said, this was not the movie we signed on to do. They signed on to do a completely different script. I think with all of the pressure that they were under, they did an amazing job with Ghostbusters 2. It could have flown off the handle at so many spots and doesn't. The mood slime does not bother me. The Statue of Liberty moving actually does. I think
it does. I mean, I loved it as a kid because it's like, I mean, what's more epic than like our symbol of freedom and democracy saving the day? But yeah, it's goofy as fuck. I mean, as a grown up, I recognize it even more than I did as a kid. And again, but
that whole sequence just reeks to me of someone saying, hey, you need something else like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, a big thing that walks across the city.
Exactly.
And I bet you 10 ideas were pitched that were really interesting. And then some studio guy said, no, it should be the Statue of Liberty because that symbolizes freedom.
Well,
I can't prove
Jackie
any
Wilson.
of that.
It's worth it just for Jackie Wilson's song.
This is true. This is true.
Can I just tell you my favorite bit of trivia about the cartoon?
Sure.
It's not even trivia. I mean, it's kind of trivia.
I think I know where you're going with this.
The voice of Garfield. Yeah. This is fascinating me. Because obviously when I heard, as a kid, so Lorenzo Music voiced Venkman in the real Ghostbusters cartoon. That whole why they have to call it the real Ghostbusters is a whole separate conversation that would be a whole podcast by itself. But and the real Ghostbusters cartoon is voiced by Lorenzo Music, which is the same voice of Garfield. So Lorenzo Music did the voice for Bill Murray as Peter Venkman. But when there was a live action Garfield movie, Lorenzo Music's original voice was replaced by Bill Murray. So it's this weird, like, sort of full circle thing. So live action Peter Venkman, Bill Murray, animated Peter Venkman, Lorenzo Music, animated Garfield, Lorenzo Music, live action Garfield, Bill Murray. Just sort of a perfect, I don't know. That's still, to me, that's.
There's got to be a couple of stoners in the audience right now going, whoa.
Whoa. Anyways, it's my favorite. So I also happen to be a huge Lorenzo Music fan.
Yes, R.I.P. Lorenzo Music. The reason he did not do the Garfield movies is because he had unfortunately already passed away. Yes, but yeah, Ghostbusters 2. It's a fun movie. I think that those studio pressures were handled very well. I think that the studio pressures absolutely destroyed the newer version of Ghostbusters. I'm anxious to see what Ivan Reitman's son does with the next one. That I have hope for that. But I had hope for the female Ghostbusters too. I think, unfortunately, that is a movie now that will be forever remembered because of its pointless and idiotic controversy.
Yep.
The performances are fine, but my God, the script and the cameos, if they had been allowed to be their own Ghostbusters, that could have been a great movie. The fact that it was trying, it spent the entire fucking movie trying to pay tribute to the original Ghostbusters, which is betraying the idea of having different Ghostbusters to begin with. Yeah, this is not the director's fault. This is not the cast's fault. The fact that they filled it with so many cameos, that pissed me off. The fact the last cameo of the original Ghostbusters in it was Ernie Hudson at the very, very end of the movie.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I spent the entire movie searching for Ernie Hudson's cameo. I'm like, wait, did I miss it? Where was it? And it shows up in the end. And then I realized by putting these cameos in, instead of just having a scene or two where all the cameos take place at once, they spread them out like they were little Easter eggs for us to find. And they completely destroyed the integrity of what integrity that story had. I mean, because I was searching for who's coming next. Is Rick Moranis going to be there? Did they actually get Rick Moranis? Like, that became my focus point while I was watching it. And that does such an incredible disservice to Paul Feig, one of the greatest directors of comedy of the last 20 years, and this incredible cast led by Melissa McCarthy, completely wasted on a movie that was trying to be nostalgic for the very thing that it was kind of rebelling against.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of weird decisions in the actual, writing or the production of the film. I still don't understand why they didn't make it, instead of an alternate universe, make it a continuation. And then you can have Ernie Hudson and Bill Murray come as, the characters that we know them for. And I felt like it would have added a legitimacy. And the rationale that I've heard was that, well, they didn't want to make it symbolically like that women had to follow in the footsteps of men, but that's exactly literally what's happening.
Yeah, exactly.
We already know that's exactly what's happening. So that's the real life, so it's like you can, anyways, it's a whole other topic, but yes, I agree with you. I think,
like, I wanted to stand up for this movie so bad because the pushback on it. And then when I saw it, I'm like, oh, well, I can't really defend this movie. I can defend it against what they're yelling about, but I can't call it good either. No, how pissed off
I was ready to love on it. Yeah, I know. And I was ready to, because again, I think Kate McKinnon's one of the funniest human beings alive. Kristen Wiig is a comedy icon at this point. Melissa McCarthy gets a lot of hate, but yeah, if you don't think Melissa McCarthy's funny, then you're an idiot, because she is, and
her husband's funny too. Let's put that out there.
Her husband is funny too.
It's like Johnny Depp and Tim Burton. At a certain point, they needed to do something else apart.
I think because you brought up Ghostbusters 2, I think staying in the comedy thing for a second, I have to talk about, I know we've talked about, I think on this podcast before, actually, did we even talk about Bill and Ted's?
We did.
On this, but on the time travel one, right? Not the...
Yeah, I was figuring Bill and Ted and Back to the Future 2, I was going to give honorable mention to and refer people back to our time travel episodes.
Yeah.
Because real estate is hard to come by here in this space. But if you have something to say about it, by all means.
I just say, obviously, as a kid, I grew up, it's, my dad worked in San Dimas, R.I.P. Henry. But, I feel like you can't have an episode of 19 without mentioning, yes, Bill and Ted is great. It's funny. It's, for a certain level of people, it's a touchstone. It's great. Let's move on, though. I think we've talked about it on previous episodes, and yes. I just felt like it had to be mentioned. But
it does. And I saw it in the drive-in in a double feature with UHF. So I dare someone to beat that.
That's a good double feature. That's a good, that's unlike the double feature I saw, which was Blair Witch, Book of Shadows 2, and I can't even. I
was there with you. We left during Blair Witch too.
Blair Witch, because it was so goddamn bad.
Was it Little Nicky? Was that the first one?
Maybe it was Little Nicky, yeah. which I was in. You can't really see me, but I'm just like a blip on the screen. But anyways, we all went to in the basketball scene. A bunch of us were in the basketball stadium. We were spectators to this basketball game thing. But anyways, but we talked about some comedies. I know you're dying to talk about Police Academy 6. But let's talk about some dramas. I feel like, obviously we're doing both.
Was there a drama you had in mind?
Well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to list all of the huge, epic, beloved dramas that mean absolutely nothing to me for whatever reasons.
Okay, I like this method.
Sex, Lies, and Videotape, influential film, super important. I don't care.
Okay, I'm going to do the counterpoint back and we'll just...
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Sex, Lies, and Videotape, one of the most important indie films ever made. The Sundance Film Festival comes from the popularity of this movie. If you get a chance to see it, see it. Some of the greatest performances. If you're a James Spader fan and you haven't seen this movie, you are not a James Spader fan.
Yeah, and the thing is, again, it's I know it's a great movie. I mean, it launched his career. I mean, it's a great movie.
Steven Soderbergh, yes.
Steven Soderbergh, famously, is it's his debut, right? It's the directorial debut.
I'm not sure on that.
I know. So the first time I remember as a kid hearing his name.
It put his name on the map. I'm not sure if it was his debut. If he had a debut.
It was definitely it was his biggest movie.
Then it was like a film school, it's like how THX is George Lucas's debut.
And it's a movie I've been wanting to revisit for years because I know it's great and I do like Soderbergh. But the one time I saw it, I was like, yeah, that was good. But maybe I was just too young, or I don't know. But
I own it. I love it. As a person that loves writing dialogue, it's a dialogue masterpiece.
That's probably I think from my memory, I can see that point. Dead Poet Society. Don't care. I mean, me and Robin Williams have loved him, and I do like him as a dramatic actor more than I like him as a comedian, which I know is fucking sacrilegious, but I think I've mentioned this on this podcast. It doesn't click with me. But Dead Poet Society, much like Good Morning Vietnam, I have no connection with that movie at all. I've seen both of them once, maybe twice. I think maybe even I saw it in school. I just don't. It's so on the nose. It's so exactly what you think it's going to be. And then again, that's not criticism. I'm not saying it's a bad movie. I know people love the movie. I just don't personally have a connection to it. I don't have anything to say. I haven't seen it in probably 25 years. Maybe I will rewatch it, but I don't have any connection to it.
Okay, my take on that, pretty much exactly the same on Dead Poet Society. We're not doing the year that Good Morning Vietnam came out. I would have a lot to say. I've watched Good Morning Vietnam 500,000 times. And if we're down to it, I would say that probably is my favorite Williams dramatic performance, if it's not World According to Garp, neither of which is Dead Poet Society. What I will say about Dead Poet Society being so fucking tropey, I will defend it in this way. I feel like Dead Poet Society is tropey in the same way that the original Halloween is tropey, in that it is creating the tropes. And there were so many copycats afterwards that it kind of washed away some of the social relevance. Maybe not, there's still critical relevance there, but some of the social relevance was washed away by the wannabes that came after.
I can see that point. Again, I think if I had maybe been older and seen it when it was new and really I know my parents really liked it. My mom really liked the movie.
My mom went to go see it with my 4th grade teacher when I was in 4th grade. And I will never forget, they went and saw that and they went and saw Rain Man. And outside of that, I don't think my mom's ever gone to a movie without me or my dad. I don't know what was going on there. Yeah. But my mom became friends with my 4th grade teacher. And that was what
very
they did.
Interesting.
They went to go see weird comedies about dramatic things or dramas about comedic things or whatever.
Well, the last big touchstone drama of 1989 that everybody was talking about at the time, that I literally have nothing to say about it, is Born on the 4th of July. I feel like besides the fact that, again, to me, it's sort of one of those things that I don't even need to see the movie. I just hear the title, I know what it's about, I can kind of picture it. I'm sure it's great cast. I mean, I go back and forth with Oliver Stone as a director. That's a whole other conversation, but it's one of those films that I thought even recently, I think it's literally one. I just saw it even on one of my streaming things searching recently, and it was like, should I watch that? And my gut instinct every time is, no, I don't really want to watch that. It's just one of those things. Like, it might be a great movie. I have no connection with it. It just doesn't pull me in. I just don't care. And I've seen it. I probably saw it when I was a kid and was probably drawing throughout the whole thing while my parents watched it.
I was curious what your take on this one will be, because I know you're a fan of Tom Cruise, and this is one of his big shining moments, and he is heartbreaking in it. He's absolutely great. Yep. This is from the golden era of Oliver Stone before he, I won't say before he lost his mind, because frankly, I think he lost his mind before he started directing, but that's part of what made him such a unique director.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's an important movie. I think it's an important movie for a number of people. But it really isn't a movie that that I ever really feel the need to bring up, even amongst Oliver Stone movies. So it deserves its accolades. But yeah, in the nature of this kind of speedball round here, I think you're onto something here, and I'm going to throw a couple of my own on top as well.
Sure.
Field of Dreams is a movie that a lot of people really love, and I get it. I liked it when I was 10. It's also probably the only year I was into baseball, so the timing of it was right. But yeah, that's another movie that seems to like really bring people to their knees. And
it's considered, I know it's actually, I saw something maybe a few weeks ago that had the list of most loved movies, and it was in the top 5. People love that movie. And Devin, I know we've discussed this before. If there's 2 things I don't give a fuck about, it's baseball and Kevin Costner. So the movie doesn't do anything for me. I know it's a great movie. I know it tugs at the heartstrings, but I have seen it. I've seen it. Again, it was a movie my parents would watch. Don't care. Doesn't do anything for me. Kevin Costner, I think, is the most overrated celebrity of all time. As far as like as an actor, I think he was so one note and everything he did. I do not care. I just don't care. But I know that's going to upset people. People love it. People love him and they love that movie. But I don't know, man. Sorry, but I'm just being honest. Doesn't do anything for me. Could not care less.
And another movie that I'm going to throw onto this list as well, just because I don't think it's the type of thing that, well, you'll know what I mean here in a second. Steel Magnolias. I saw this. I have a mother and a sister. And so in my house, this movie played a lot. And I really like this movie. It is one of the best of that kind of
it's the best
melodrama. Like post Douglas Sirk melodrama. It really is one of the best. Directed by Herbert Ross, who also directed one of my all-time favorite movies, Pennies from Heaven, which we'll have to get into at some point in another episode. But what a cast. I mean, Sally Field and Dolly Parton and Shirley MacLaine. I'm signing up for that anyways. Olympia Dukakis, rest in peace. And of course, Julia Roberts. This might have been the first thing I saw Julia Roberts in. And Tom Skerritt is the husband. Great movie. It seems to be one of those movies that it has been directly remade once with an all-black cast, which I would be interested in seeing that. I think Queen Latifah's in it, which is enough to at least make me curious. But it's not my kind of movie. It's not the type of thing that I'm going to pursue seeing any version of Steel Magnolias. But it seems like since Steel Magnolias has come out, every generation since has had their quote-unquote Steel Magnolias, even if it wasn't a in-name remake.
Fried green tomatoes and everything. Yeah, exactly.
This kind of thing has gone on and on. You would almost call it a chick flick if chick flick didn't also more directly refer to romantic comedies. But this is why I'm dancing around it, is because I think chick flick is something that needs to go away.
Yeah, I agree.
But I haven't come up with
somebody who loves romantic comedies. I agree. It is very much a female perspective film, female centric point of view film, and that's totally awesome. I mean, but
you can experience grief through those characters, which is incredibly well done. They made a 10-year-old boy want to cry for a mother losing her child, and that's you got to be good to get that to happen.
I think it's loved by women because obviously it's a very female-centric point of view film, and I think that's fucking great. Good for that. Like, I enjoy the movie. I haven't seen it in a while. I think me and Gabby watched it just a few years ago. But either way, I remember I hadn't seen it in a while since then I saw it again. I was like, damn, yeah, it's still a great movie. I mean, again, that cast, of course, it's going to be a good movie. It's definitely, I'm very guilty of sometimes forgetting that movie is as good as it is or even exists, because of my own, it's a movie for women, but it's just a great movie. It doesn't, but at the same time, women have embraced the film as sort of like this is a women's movie, and you know what, whatever, that's fine. I think it's a place marker in film history for that reason, Yeah, it's very important. But
and again, that cast should not be ignored.
No, absolutely not.
I will throw one more into this that leans back into the comedies a little bit, but I think it's another thing that we might reasonably have opinions on, but not something we want to spend a lot of time on. And that is When Harry Met Sally came out in 1989, which is, of course, a huge movie for its genre, romantic comedies. Billy Crystal is going to be kind of creepy to me as a love interest in anything. I love City Slickers. I love his more dramatic Memories of Me. I've watched that 500,000 times. So Analyze This, I think is very funny. But whenever Billy Crystal is a romantic interest, I get a little.
I couldn't. Yeah.
There's no word for it. It's just that sound. Versus Meg Ryan, who I can absolutely. America had a crush on her for about 7 years, and I was one of the Americans that had a crush on her. And then I think that starts with this movie too, even though it's not even her first Hanks team up. And of course Hanks was offered this role, but I don't know if you have any opinions on When Harry Met Sally.
So full disclosure, I've watched every single one of those, like sort of Nora Ephron.
She's brilliant.
Yeah, I love them all, and
I clearly have more to say about this movie than I thought I did.
Yeah, it's great. It's again, you talked about dialogue. It's a dialogue-heavy movie. I agree with you 1,000%. Solely because of his comedic chops, he was given because of how successful he was with that, and then his, the public loved him. But to me, he's like Billy Joel. Like, how'd this guy get this gig? Like,
hey, you watch yourself with Billy Joel.
I like Billy Joel too. I'm just saying, like, it's like he doesn't look the part, we'll say. But yeah, it's great. It's it's famous for that specific scene, the orgasm scene in the diner. But start to finish, it's a great movie. It's very honest, and it's it's like, yeah, like he's kind of a dickhead. She's kind of cold. Like they're real people. Like it's a romantic comedy, but they're not. They're very much kind of real people.
The elements that are problematic almost make me kind of want to say, well, yeah, that's because relationships are problematic.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't have a case by case set of numbers for this, but I would say that the romantic comedy genre, or romance in general, is more of a minefield for problematic scenes and characters than horror and action combined.
100%. I agree with you on that.
And I think this film does step in the minds of here and there, but it's minds that
he's definitely kind of misogynist
for another 10, 20 years.
Yeah, Billy Crystal has very misogynistic point of view, very old world point of views on women, and throughout the film and stuff. But because I love When Harry Met Sally, and it's definitely the biggest romantic comedy, not only of this year, but of this time. But it's not my favorite romantic comedy of this year. My most, and probably outside of maybe, and this is talking about problematic, I mean, the greatest romantic comedy of all time, I don't care what anybody says, for the rest of life will be Annie Hall. I think for me, not saying for the world, but for me, the second greatest romantic comedy of all time is Say Anything.
Yeah.
And, a movie that didn't, wasn't necessarily as, the big hit that a lot of movies in this year was, but I could go on about this movie forever, but first off, the poster says, to know Lloyd Dobler is to love Lloyd Dobler. You're about to know Lloyd Dobler. And the cast is great, top to bottom. But the thing that makes this movie so beautiful is it is the most perfect. The whole movie is about selfless love. John Cusack's character, while being legitimately the star of the movie, he is fully in support of Ione Skye. He exists to offer love and support of Ione Skye, who is going through, this very traumatic thing with her father and everything as she's going out. And most of these kind of romantic comedies, it's about the girl sort of trying to support the boy, or even like sort of a, like they both have to sort of sacrifice something to be together. In this movie, Lloyd Dobler, all he wants is to love Diane Court, the character that Ione Skye plays. It's sort of the perfect, like, good girl. Like, she's like, and Lloyd Dobler is like this, all of his kick. It's also hysterical that I don't want to buy anything bought or sold. I don't want to process anything sold or bought. That whole, everything about it, it's hysterical. It's lovely. It's so sweet. It's great. John Mahoney's whole performance in it is so fucking good.
He should have been nominated for an Oscar.
Yep, as he rightfully deserved. It's so good, dude. Like, I watch it all the time. Literally all the time. The soundtrack is great, even though it has Red Hot Chili Peppers soundtrack. But back when they were at least even remotely interesting. But it's got the famous, the boombox scene, which everybody knows it for, and it's great. That In Your Eyes by Peter Gabriel, that song's brilliant. But to me, the heart of that movie is the very last scene when they get on the airplane. And I'm going to start crying right now. I'm getting choked up thinking about it, because Lloyd Dobler, like as a man, especially in the movie, he's like a kickboxer dude. Like, the whole thing is he's this man, like he's a guy, like, they say don't be a guy, but all he wants to do is support Diane Court. He lives to love, and it's just such a beautiful sort of like he's gonna hold her hand no matter like it just you don't see that, especially from these point of view films. So, anyways, it's to me it's great, top to bottom. Everybody, even Jeremy Piven is likable in it, and that's saying something for the short amount of time he's in the movie.
He's likable because he's such a douche.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody plays douche like Piven, man.
No, he cornered the market on the douche,
but you're right. I mean, this movie's so iconic, and so much of this movie is parodied today, and half the time people don't know what the movie is.
Yeah.
I know that my stepdaughter has seen stuff where someone holds a boombox over their head and has no idea what it comes from. I actually rewatched this again because I was like, I think my stepdaughter who just turned 13 would like this, but I'm not sure. I made a mistake in showing her Urban Cowboy because I hadn't seen Urban Cowboy in a long time. And oh my God, Urban Cowboy is one of the most problematic movies ever made. That is a movie about abuse that was marketed as a movie about dancing. But Say Anything is Say Anything is so like pure at heart. There was one part that kind of made me kind of like, when she's talking about something that she felt that Lloyd was maybe entitled to.
Yeah.
In which she refers to it as if it was something that she should do for him. She kind of saves it by the end of the scene. By saying, I don't want to give it away for some reason. I'll spoil other things.
It's a 33-year-old movie.
Okay, yeah, giving him her virginity. She does this whole thing where she's telling her dad about it, and she's like, I felt like he needed it, and it's kind of gross stuff that has been reflected by culture for a long time. And then she goes, and then we did nothing, and then I jumped him.
Yeah, that's the thing.
That indicates that she was the one who wanted it all along. Like, well, they both obviously did.
And and that's the thing. If that's what,
but it puts the decision in her hands.
Exactly. And at no point does Lloyd just wants to be with her. Like, and like I said, he doesn't. She's saying because she knows that's what guys want, or that's what guys expect, and this is her first experience again. And I also love that last line, and I just jumped to it anyway. It's so perfect because if I have any complaint throughout the movie is that it does sometimes feel one-sided. It does feel like he's chasing her and she's not his biggest priority. It is going to school, it's figuring out things with her dad, and then that whole thing. But
those are all reasonable things to place above having a boyfriend. But that's the thing, is exactly, and that's that age or any age.
Because he pursues her, and that's. But dude. One of my favorite things about this movie.
But that's what she has to learn. She's pursuing these other things, and all he wants is to pursue her.
To her, exactly.
So he's saying,
kind of intruded in her life, honestly.
He's like, let me pursue you, like you can still do all this other stuff. Just do it with me.
Yeah, exactly. But I was going to say, that whole scene when they're in their car, there's such an authentic, she's shivering, and she's like, what? Like, he's shivering not because he's cold, he's shivering because he's so happy, and he's so honestly in love in that moment that endorphins are running through his body and he can't stop shaking. That is that's adrenaline and everything that come if you've had similar experiences or first loves and these things, the first time you're with somebody, that's a real thing that happened. But I've never seen it replicated in the film before. And it's handled so beautifully and so like they don't say what's going on. In fact, like he, gives her the jacket or whatever, but the first time I watched that, like, I didn't really, it's like whatever, like 14-year-old kid, 15-year-old kid, when the first time I saw it. Then I saw it again, after I was a grown person. That scene really hit me as how honest and real that felt and how vulnerable Lloyd is in that moment. Like, he's so filled with love and so like, he's so happy in that moment to be with her that like he's coursing with adrenaline. It's such a great scene. I could talk about this movie we could have a whole podcast dedicated to this movie, but let's move on because this is already running long. We have a ton of movies we need to talk about.
Let's get, there's one more movie of 89 that was so big that it can't be ignored. Let's maybe dive into that one. Can you guess which one I mean?
Well, we talked about Back to the Future 2. Let me see something. Let me see if I can guess it from a list of movies from this year. I mean, unless you're talking about Major League. No, you're not talking about Wizard, although I do like the Wizard. Is it a comedy? I mean, we can talk about Parenthood. I love that fucking movie. Skin Deep, with a weird ass movie. I love John Ritter, but that's a weird ass movie. I know what it is. Big Man on Campus.
You're right. It's Big Man on Campus. I
can't. What is it? What is it?
Damn it. Now I want to talk about Big Man on Campus. Just to point it, because I don't think we're going to be able to spend any time on this. But if you haven't seen Big Man on Campus, a college comedy based on Hunchback of Notre Dame that in the UK was called Hunchback of UCLA. If you feel that a movie with a character whose name is Bob Maluga Luga is something you're missing, if you think that's something missing in your life, see this movie. Now, it's Big Man on Campus is kind of oddly underrated, and I watched it 100 times on cable and didn't think about it for another 10 years.
Literally, that's the only sequence I can remember from the movie is when he gets the name Bob Beluga. That's the only thing I remember from the movie.
It's so dumb, but it's so funny.
It's dumb as
but the movie I am actually talking about that was too big to ignore is Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Didn't we talk about it? I thought we talked about it on the science fiction. No,
maybe.
Okay, I thought we'd already talked about it. But
we were saving that and Ghostbusters 2 for this episode because we had so much to talk about in that one.
I still feel like we talked about it though. Either way, but yes, let's talk about it.
It's been name dropped, but we have not discussed it because I know we haven't mentioned that it's written by Stuart Gordon and Brian Yuzna.
That's right. Which is very bizarre.
We've talked about
famous animator films and
Reanimator, Society.
I was going to say in Society, which was also released in this year. So what a crazy.
Stuart Gordon directed Robot Jocks this year too.
Exactly. Yep, that's right. But yeah, it's a movie that my son weirdly liked it when we first showed him when he was probably 6 or 7. He doesn't like movies, which breaks my heart. He's a YouTube generation, so if anything's longer than 15 minutes, he gets bored.
My stepdaughter's the same way. Heartbreaking.
But I'm hoping that changes at some point. But I mean, he can be into whatever he's into. But it's great. I will say, because again, as a kid, kid of the time frame, that was a huge movie. I mean, I watched it alone. But yeah, even to this day, I literally only watch it for Rick Moranis just because of my undying love for Rick Moranis. But I remember being super into it, thinking it was so, great. And then rewatching it recently and being like, this kind of drags a little bit. It's a little slow. Like, doesn't hold my attention as much as it did, probably in the late 80s and early 90s when I was a little kid. But
I think that's probably on us. I don't think it was boring in 89. Just everybody's tastes have
No, not at all.
We can't help it. We complain about the YouTube generation, but we're the MTV generation, and it's a declension.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, great film. I mean, it's a concept that you can do so much with, and they did, and the special effects at the time were great.
A lot of great practical effects.
I remember.
I love with Stuart Gordon and Yuzna writing it. It is actually body horror for kids.
Yeah, exactly. I do. I have to say though, I held a weird grudge against the movie, but less the movie and the fact that the ride at Disneyland replaced Captain EO, and I was a huge Captain EO fan. Still am. I still love it. What a weird thing Captain EO is. But yeah. For a long time I held a grudge against it because it took Captain EO away from me, not realizing at the time it had nothing to do with. It's like they took it away for other reasons. But yeah. With that said, great movie, iconic movie. I can't believe we. Well, anyways, what are your thoughts on it, Devin?
Yeah, I think you pretty well covered it. The effects were mind blowing. I loved it. It's a testament to the strength of the movie, but also maybe some of the attitudes of the time that it was literally released the same day as Batman and is still as beloved and well known and as successful as it was. Because, I mean, it really, seriously, you're coming out in a big hitting summer and you're actually coming out the same weekend as the #1 movie of the year and still kicking ass. I think that was partly Disney's brilliant marketing with releasing it in theaters with Tummy Trouble, a rare Roger Rabbit short that I remember seeing theatrically. I think it did eventually make it onto the DVD or something, but Roger Rabbit and Tummy Trouble is still not something that is seen very, very frequently. But I think that was its anti-bat spray to you get the audience into a brand new original script by enticing them with a short by the previously celebrated successful IP. I'm a big fan of Matt Frewer too.
Matt Frewer
played the neighbor. He's best known as Max Headroom.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. He was all throughout the 80s and 90s. Great actor, actually. I always felt bad that he sort of got pigeonholed as Max Headroom. I feel it weird that it has taken us essentially almost 3 multi-hour podcasts to just comment on the fact that 1989 was the year that we got 2 buddy cop with a dog movies. And I saw both of them in the theater in 1989.
As did I. Where do you fall on the big?
And I will definitely say who's better, Turner Hooch or K9? Oh, definitely Turner. Yeah, I mean, dude, Tom Hanks. I would spend an hour and a half watching Tom Hanks fucking. Never mind. I was going to go really graphic, but I'll save that. But yeah, dude. I mean, Tom Hanks. Even if the movie was just an hour and a half of the dog tongue kissing Tom Hanks, I'd still rather watch that than anything with fucking Jim Belushi in it. But even though I gotta say, I liked Jim Belushi at the time. I liked Red Heat, and I did like K9. But yeah, Turner Hooch is definitely the better made of the two.
I completely agree. I was more of a K9 guy because we had a German Shepherd, and so there's just
I will say
having
the dog was so slobbery and gross.
It's the point.
I might take this back. Maybe K9's better because it didn't have the dog drooling constantly, which is so gross.
Well, but Turner and Hooch is the one that took the full plunge though and had the dog die at the end. That was
which is
shocking, especially after seeing K9. I thought that there was no way, like in my head at 10 years old, K9 and Turner and Hooch are like 100 years apart, even though it's probably a matter of only like probably 2 months. But seeing the dog come back, because they do a kind of a MacGuffin sort of it's not really a MacGuffin, but
a misdirection,
a mislead on the audience to make you think the dog died in K9, but the dog's fine.
Yep.
Then when the same thing happens in Turner and Hooch, I'm like, he's gonna wake up though, right? The other one woke up. He's gonna wake up, right?
No, it's very traumatic. It's funny too because it's one of those things where if that movie was made today, there's no way that dog would die.
No,
the studios would. Yeah, there's no way. So I like how that even in 1989, the dog cop movies were taking chances. There's a lot of movies we didn't talk about, like weird ones like Little Monsters or Dream a Little Dream, which I have a very weird affinity for. Dream a Little Dream. The fact that you mentioned earlier of fucking Corey Haim and his fucking Corey Feldman, excuse me, and his fucking weird Michael Jackson thing, which was 3 or 4 is too late to have that obsession, and it's still Dream a Little Dream's a weird fucking movie, but I have an appreciation for it. But we didn't talk about it a lot. Was there any other movies though that you wanted to talk about before we wrap up?
There's 2. I will mention 2. Look Who's Talking came out in '89, which a lot of people love.
I'm not talking about. You can talk about that movie. Fuck that movie.
I am not going to talk about Look Who's Talking. I just don't want to get called out for forgetting it. National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation I could speak about for a long time too, but
oh shit, did that come out this year?
That was 1989.
Oh, I didn't even see it come up on my. Of course, I mean
because it's Christmas '89, so it wasn't coming up on most of its box office came in '90.
Yeah, I was gonna say I would have thought it was 1990, so 1990, 91. Because that's I think, but yeah, to this day, anybody who doesn't put Christmas Vacation in their top 2 favorite Christmas movies of all time is either a liar or an idiot. I mean, it's great. It's just it's so stupid, but so brilliantly stupid. And
I have a feeling we'll do a deeper dive into Christmas Vacation sometime when we maybe do I'm not against doing a Chevy Chase as long as we can talk plenty of shit about him too.
I mean, the thing is,
because he's such a problematic star, but he's exactly. And we'll go ahead and let Fletch 2 die its death in 1989.
There you go.
Clearly, Chase had a better sequel in him in '89, and that was Christmas Vacation. I will say, on a fun fact level, just before we move on, there was one funny thing I read. The scene where he goes off in the tirade and just starts naming off insults on his boss. Apparently, each of the cast members, because the room is full when he's doing this, you can't see it on camera, but each of the cast members has a little piece of paper taped to their forehead with a different insult so that he can look around the room and call out all these things on this tirade. And I wish someone had thought to get a picture of that. Maybe they did, and they're just not. Chevy Chase won't let it be seen because he wants it to be known as an improvisation, but I love that. But the ones that I will be sad if I don't talk about, one is Mystery Train. I don't know if you have any.
I was going to say, Train. I didn't know. I mean, I mean, Jim Jarmusch, it's like a legitimate piece of art. Probably one of his films I've watched the least of that era. Not because I didn't like it, I don't own it. I haven't seen it in a good while, but yeah, I mean, it's essential. It's if you like Jim Jarmusch, Mystery Train it's Jim Jarmusch. It's exactly what you want a Jim Jarmusch movie to be. Yeah,
it's fantastic. One of my all-time favorite of that era. Screaming Jay Hawkins plays a part, which you don't get to say very often. Tom Waits is the disc jockey, and I always imagine in my head that it's the disc jockey he plays in Jarmusch's Down by Law, who escaped from prison. And I always think, oh, he made it. He made it to Memphis, you know. And
that's a great.
I think there might be an attempt at a multiverse there with that weird sort of side casting.
Dude, I just realized, I think the last time I saw it was with you and Ben.
Might be.
I think the last time I literally saw it was that long ago. It's really about now. It's crazy. No, I rented it. Gabby and I rented it from when I lived in Alameda, California, which is still my favorite place on earth. We rented it. They had the most insane. Our local library in Alameda, their video library, every Criterion film, it's where I saw all the Cassavetes film. I mean, I miss it to this day, but we rented a bunch of Jim Jarmusch, and that was one of them. Anyway, sorry, weird tangent, but go on.
No.
Real quick, Devin, I'm just curious. What is your all-time favorite Jim Jarmusch movie? If you had to pick one.
Oh, the one that first comes into my head is Down by Law, but I think that's I don't know. I would have to do a full examination to really get into it. Mystery Train's a close second, though.
I do love Mystery Train.
And some of his more contemporary stuff I still need to see.
Some of it, like that fucking vampire movie he did was fucking phenomenal. Anyways, still my favorite Till I Die will probably be Dead Man. I think it's one of the most
very good,
incredible movies ever made. But anyway, sorry, weird tangent.
Might have been the first one I saw of his. Interesting about Jim Jarmusch, most of my friends on the East Coast adore him, like idolize him, and most of my friends on the West Coast are bored to tears. You're one of the few. You and Ben Adams,
really,
probably two of the only fans of Jarmusch I know on the West Coast.
I love him. I used to have a picture.
I do too.
There's a picture. I think it's pretty famous, but I used to have a picture cut out when I lived in Alameda about my thing of Jarmusch and Waits on a park bench in New York, just looking like the two coolest human beings who have ever lived. And I just remember thinking that is coolness. Like if there's certain things that are cool, like the way Fonz was cool, but you know what I'm saying? Like they were just, to me, the coolest looking dudes on earth. So anyways, but yeah, I love Jarmusch.
I'll tell this story real quick just because I don't know where else I could tell it. But when I lived in New York, I lived basically across the street from the Chelsea Hotel, which is a really cool section of New York. And a lot of people have lived in that area, a lot of famous people. And died in that area. But the bar that was in my building that became my bar that I would go to every night. One night I brought up Tom Waits, and the old timers at the bar were like, "Oh, Cheapskate Waits." And I find out that was also Tom Waits's bar when he lived in New York City, and he was known as Cheapskate Waits because he was Cheapskate Waits. But Tom Waits is one of the few.
For him.
It's one of the few personalities where I will say, I kind of expect him and want him to be a cheapskate.
That's right.
That's so him. I know we're running low. I know you've got to go soon. Even if it's just a blurt out, I have to mention Vampire's Kiss, because Vampire's Kiss is such a special movie to me. It is perfect in every way. It's the exact Nicolas Cage as a vampire should automatically get it put on the list of greatest movies ever made. And I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this. But these are the people that disagree about Cage's acting ability in the first place. If you like Cage, you'll like this. If you don't like Cage, you'll hate it. But one of the few hills that I will stand on and die on, creatively speaking, is that Nicolas Cage is one of the most unique and talented actors that ever lived.
I could not agree more.
Vampire's Kiss is his own favorite movie of his work. The scene where he is going crazy and he walks headfirst into the side of a building because he's not paying attention that might be the most rewindable moment of all of 1989. I cannot watch that movie without rewinding that part, because he's ranting and raving and just runs face first into the side of a building. It's so Wile E. Coyote. It is so ridiculous. It almost feels natural. It would not surprise me to find out that Cage was so into his character that he did not see the building coming. I mean, he didn't walk into a pole. He didn't walk out into traffic. He walked into the broadside of a building.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, I agree 100%. Weirdly, in the late 80s and early 90s, there's all these sort of art house vampire movies, kind of, whether it was The Addiction and Vampire's Kiss is a very weird movie. It's like, even though Cage's performance in the movie is so I don't want to say over the top, because that sort of, that doesn't really honestly give it enough credit. It's so unique, we'll say, or so Nick, so purely, like, it's his pure vision of that performance of, like, but it doesn't, the movie doesn't, it's so ambiguous. And yeah, I love the movie. I love Nicolas Cage anyways. I mean, first off,
it's one of my top
says,
5 movies about vampires, if that,
yeah, I was gonna say,
know.
I watched, you and I are both big Martin fans. In fact, I'd be very upfront saying you were the first, you showed me Martin and I fucking fell in love with it. But I basically recently I watched all these sort of, like, my favorite underappreciated, like, vampire movies. I mean,
and Martin's coming to 4K, by the way, by Second Sight.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
Same company that did the excellent Dawn of the Dead.
There's a t-shirt company called Rough Cut. I forget the full title, but I bought a Martin t-shirt from them. It's really beautiful. And then I ended up spilling essentially super glue, but it was like a resin thing, but all over the shirt and ruined the shirt. I'm very upset. But anyways, I spent a weekend and I watched The Hunger, The Addiction, Near Dark, even though I think that one isn't as under, I mean, people love that movie, but then Vampire's Kiss, and I remember thinking, like, Vampire's Kiss is one of the most, that and Vamp, I think, are, like, I definitely think two totally different movies. Vamp is more of a traditional, just a very specific vampire movie. I just think Grace Jones is fucking incredible. But I remember watching all, like, great. I mean, The Addiction is a great fucking movie.
Yeah.
Able for a brilliant movie. Hunger is really, I mean, great cast, really atmospheric. But I think the one I said, I was like, I think the one I still most enjoy of all of them is still Vampire's Kiss, because it's so, it's there's nothing like it. And again, it's just, I think, what deserved an Oscar is fucking his hair in that movie. He's got, like, this, like, Shemp Howard energy to his hair that I love so much.
And I would add to his hair his eyebrows.
Oh yeah.
His eyebrows do a great job in this movie.
Yeah, his eyebrows are doing about 50% of the work, I think.
Watching him lose his mind and not knowing if he's losing his mind about losing his mind or just losing his mind.
Yeah,
it's it really is. It's a chicken or the egg conundrum. Was he crazy before, or? And just like Martin, it is questioning the entire time. Are you actually watching a person become a vampire, or is this all
unhinged?
Yeah, a psychological condition. And frankly, I don't think this is enough of a spoiler, because I don't think enough people have seen either movie. But almost identical ending between Vampire's Kiss and Martin. One thing though that Vampire's Kiss has that sometimes you learn something about a movie and you're like, oh my God, it all makes sense now. I just found this out doing the research for this, and it's part of why I wanted to mention this movie so specifically, on top of just wanting to be a champion of it. The writer of this movie is the guy who wrote Scorsese's After Hours. These two movies are probably the greatest late 80s New York City comedies ever written. There are so many bizarre similarities between these two things in tone and style.
I didn't know that, but yeah, that does make a lot of sense.
Griffin Dunn was not worried that he was becoming a vampire, but he was increasingly paranoid that people were out to get him. And somehow After Hours is constantly pointed out as underrated Scorsese in a movie that people need to discover. And Vampire's Kiss is generally left off that list. I think we can bring these two together. I would love, like, if anyone at the New Beverly is listening, give us an After Hours Vampire's Kiss preview, and you might actually get my ass to go out to a movie theater again to see that.
Well, I'll say I'm recovering from this my second shot. I am now fully vaccinated, and I was just saying,
me too. High five through Zoom,
virtual high five. But yeah, I was like, look, I've been really, like, I want to support theaters, obviously, but again, it's not worth risking. That you're sitting. But now I'm like, hey, travel and movie theaters, but. Hopefully I'll still wait a little bit longer, because I still, just because I'm vaccinated, I want to make sure,
I'm going to see how I feel when the new Halloween comes out. That's the one I'm projecting as possibly my first.
That's what I
return to theaters. There's a part of me that feels like it's probably very safe to return to theaters. I don't know that I will enjoy it sitting there with the mask on for 2 hours.
That's exactly. That's my biggest concern.
So part of the enjoyment is not, and I feel I'm not being selfish in saying that, because I think people should be wearing masks.
I was gonna say the same, exactly. But I would enjoy the experience more sitting at home, sans mask, in the comfort of my home. Also, without just the anxiety of knowing, like, there might be people. So yeah, I agree 100%. And it's weird because that was literally what I said just the other day was probably the first movie that gets me into the theater. So
well, let's
hopefully it's good.
Hopefully we're good enough and we can meet back here and talk about the new Halloween, because that Halloween, or at least as a series, Halloween might be the most discussed series that we have on this show without having actually done a Halloween episode.
That's right.
Well, I know you're running out of time. We've got in a lot of discussion here. I mean, for anybody who's a fan of Weekend at Bernie's, I'm sorry.
War of the Roses. We can talk about that.
War of the Roses, Penn and Teller Get Killed, Pink Cadillac, Crimes and Misdemeanors by Woody Allen.
No shit. Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of that.
Earth Girls Are
Well,
Easy.
it's fine. We can. There's some of them even on here. I thought there's other ways we could circle back and talk about this.
Exactly. So we'll do just that. But I think this closes out 1989 for now, and keep checking us. We're gonna maybe make some moves on some things in upcoming episodes. We'll keep you abreast of that and maybe make a couple of changes that I think people will be into that will make us more consistently able to record. Because man, I don't know about you, but sometimes these deep dives that are 2 or 3 episodes long, like I said, as great of a year as it was, 89 fatigued me. 89 made me tired. Yeah. There are other contributing factors of the last 6 weeks that also slowed me down, but
yeah, it's also exhausting just because there's so many good movies that you want to go through them all and give them all their fair share. But yeah, maybe these big scoping episodes we will pull back on for a little bit. Although if our audience likes them, let us know on our social media, which Devin will tell you all about.
You can find us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. We're under Den of Sin Podcast. That's Den of CIN, Sin as in cinema. We do not have a tremendous amount of presence on there right now, but we're gonna
change that though. In fact, I think we're gonna have some, maybe even by our next episode, maybe have some new things, maybe new places to send people. So but we'll save that for the next episode to make any kind of actual statement before we commit to anything.
Well, any podcast is a work in progress, and I think we've got some improvements on the horizon. One thing that will not change is my admiration and respect for you and your thoughts on film. So
vice versa, Devin. You're just a pleasure to chat with, whether we're talking about movies or anything. You're just one of my favorite human beings, and your passion and knowledge of films is infectious. So I thank you, good sir.
Thank you. And on that note, everybody, take care of yourselves. Be safe. We're going to keep at it. You keep at it, and we'll see each other through this. Don't know what the next episode's going to be about, but we will be working on that soon. So sorry again for the wait here, but you will see us a lot sooner returning to your podcast networks, Spotify, Google Music, or Google
all the podcast places.
Any
wherever you're getting your podcast from.
Exactly. All right, James. Right. Well, you take care of yourself till then, and I'll talk to you soon.
Take care, Devin. Take care, guys.
Bye.